the number of flights in and out, and the fact that we have a multilingual professional staff that not only understands the idiosyncrasy of the business community in the 33 nations of the hemisphere, but we really are a true microcosm. For those who want to argue that because a city or another city have more multinationals, I say, let's look at where the Latin American and Caribbean operations of these multinationals are. Many are actually headquartered here, and they're here for an obvious reason.
Right. I believe there are over 500 multinational corporations based in Miami, and of those 500, 250 are directed towards Latin America.
That's correct. That's correct.
And of the companies we just recently read, those weren't even the trading companies, but I think one of the key indicators of Miami in terms of the economic benefit is the cargo, in terms of the trade and the freight that comes through Miami.
Absolutely. I think it's an important point to highlight as well. And you heard me say earlier that 47% of what our country as a whole exports in the whole world is purchased by Latin America and the Caribbean. 47%. So we have a mutual dependency. Most of that flows in and out of Florida, in and out of the airport and the port of
Right.
Miami.
I think we have a graph that explains a little bit about the cargo coming through Miami. The percentage of all U.S. airborne exports to Latin America and the Caribbean represents 76%, and the percentage of all U.S. airborne imports from Latin America are over 70. I believe they're 79%. So those are some big numbers.
Yeah, and this is why when we say we're the gateway of the Americas, it's not unfounded. This is the proof in the pudding.
Wow. And from what I understand, the banking centers is another key indicator of one of the reasons why Miami feels that it is the natural seat for the permanent secretariat. I think we have a graph that shows some of the numbers of the amount of assets of the international banking centers that are based in Miami. I understand that there's more than $52 billion of trade financed through Miami. I think there's a graph of that we can pull up on the screen. Why do you think that's an important...
Well, this graph that you're referring to that we see on the screen now really confirms what we say often. We are the second largest international banking center in the United States, second to New York, and we certainly have one of the largest international banking centers as you compare it to the rest of the hemisphere. So it is one more compelling fact as to why we have become the epicenter, why folks from all the countries of the hemisphere come here to do business. It's, again, not an accident. This is something that has been developed over the decades that now we have a chance to reaffirm.
Now, I know that, again, we mentioned that Miami has the support of Uruguay, and a few other countries are going to announce their support. What other cities have gained the support of surrounding countries in terms of the competition? Has Atlanta received support from any Latin American countries thus far that you're aware of?
Not as far as we're aware of. The only two endorsements have been, as I mentioned, Uruguay, who's endorsed Miami, and then the CARICOM nations have united behind Trinidad, which is which is expected. This is the way CARICOM always operates, which is to support their own, because collectively they have more force than they do individually. But we are working every single Caribbean nation very aggressively, and we're suggesting to them that if and when Trinidad does not have any more support, that they consider us as a good second option. And I think we're going to have lots of success in that effort.
So what's the day in the life of Jorge Arrisurieta like in terms of trying to secure Miami as the permanent secretariat?
It's long and boring. It's actually, it's a varied day. I mean, we have really what you have is as much a local campaign as you have a national campaign as you have an international campaign. And we've got to access the 34 heads of state, 33 in the U.S. Heads of state.
Are you meeting with different presidents and ministers of Latin American countries on a regular basis? What kind of efforts are you pursuing?
This is really something that really goes way beyond me. This is an effort of public and private partnership across the state. We have these country mission trips where we have delegations put together and access and meet and visit the heads of state, the ministers of trade and commerce, for the most part managing the agreement for their respective countries. And we also reach out in a very clear way to the private sector leadership of these nations. So whether it's through these mission trips or when they visit South Florida, which is pretty often, our effort is to market and as you said, to lobby and suggest why this is a great choice, not just for Miami, Florida, but also for the respective country.
Sure. So what kind of negotiations are taking place? Can you give us an example of some of perhaps behind-the-scenes conversations in terms of what Miami and Florida can offer in exchange for the support for the permanent secretariat to, say, a South American country?
Well, quite candidly, Whitney, what we offer is who we are. You know, this is not about a city or a state reaching out to make a new friend in the Western Hemisphere. These relationships we've had for the past 4 decades. So what we're asking is that they consider honoring us by selecting us as a winner of this most coveted prize, but not just because it's good for us, but because it's really an economic opportunity for that respective country.
What would you say has been your biggest accomplishment thus far in this process?
I think the biggest accomplishment we've had as a community, as a state, is really organizing ourselves to show that 40-plus-year-old relationship I refer to is best represented by the outreach we're doing, by the support we're receiving, and I think a lot of that will be further telling as the months unfold here sometime early next year.
Well, I think that this is a very interesting conversation. We're finalizing a conversation with Mr. Jorge Arrisurieta, who is the Executive Director and COO of Florida FTAA. And stay tuned for closing comments when we return.
Security, I think, is not always a given, which may have been something that we took for granted in the past.
To ultimately be the victor in the war against terrorism, we need all Americans to be engaged, down to the point where we ask mothers and fathers to think about doing some simple things at home to protect themselves and protect their children.
No terror that's even greater, not knowing if your children are safe, if your family's safe. It doesn't come worse than that.
People and your children understand that there is a plan.
Having these plans in place is just sort of common sense.
Establish like a communication plan, how to get in touch with each other.
You'll have a radio, you'll have a flashlight, you'll have batteries.
Make sure you have enough water and food.
Have your basic essentials that you would need in everyday life.
You will have done something to prepare. You were in control. You had a choice. We're asking America to be ready.
People will pull together and people will make it through this.
Welcome back to Miami's Global Connection. If you would like more information on FTAA Florida, please visit the website. You can also contact the local Greater Miami chapter at United Nations Association. Today we've touched on a number of interesting topics, and for viewers' questions and comments, please contact us by email, and be sure to leave your comments about our show at www.cabletap.com. We would like to thank our guest, Mr. Jorge Arrisurieta, for sharing his insightful comments and joining us today. It looks like you've got your work cut out for you, and I wish you the very best of luck in securing Miami as the permanent secretariat.
Thank you very much for this opportunity.
I'm Whitney Belker, and this is Miami's Global Connection.